Princess Zara stood at the great window of the royal tower, watching the 3 moons of Velan rise above the crystal cities. The sight that once filled her with pride now brought only fear. Soon, these beautiful cities might be nothing but ash and ruin. "Your Highness," came a voice behind her. General Nyx, the head of Vellani Defense Forces, entered the chamber with heavy steps. His blue skin looked pale, and his usually bright silver eyes were dim with worry. "What news from the outer systems?" Zara asked, though she already knew the answer would be terrible. "The Korthak horde has taken the Beltan colonies," Nyx said quietly. 17 billion souls, gone. Their ships are moving toward the core worlds. At this speed, they will reach Velan in 6 months. Zara closed her eyes and tried to calm her racing heart. The Korthak were monsters from the dark edge of the galaxy. They consumed everything in their path. Entire civilizations disappeared when the horde passed through. No one had ever successfully fought them off. "How many ships do they have now?" she asked. "Our scouts counted over 3,000 vessels before they were destroyed. The number grows with every world they take. They steal ships, technology, even people to serve in their armies." Zara turned from the window. At 26 years old, she was young for a ruler, but the responsibility of her people weighed heavily on her shoulders. Her father had died 2 years ago, leaving her to face this crisis alone. "What do our allies say?" General Nyx looked uncomfortable. "The Zephyrian Federation sends their regrets but says they cannot spare any ships. The Centauri Republic is moving their fleets to protect their own borders. The Galactic Council offers prayers for our survival. So we stand alone." "Not exactly, Your Highness. There is one offer of help, though the Council finds it quite strange." Zara raised an eyebrow. "Strange how?" "The humans have requested a meeting. They claim they can help us." Zara almost laughed. Humans were one of the newest species to achieve space travel. They had been exploring the galaxy for less than 200 years. Their technology was crude compared to most civilizations. Their ships were slow and their weapons simple. What could such a primitive species possibly do against the Korthak horde? Humans. What could they want? "I do not know, Princess. But they insist the meeting is urgent. Their ambassador arrived 3 hours ago." Zara sighed. She had nothing to lose by listening. "Very well. Bring him to the council chamber." An hour later, Zara sat in the great council chamber with the 7 members of the ruling council. The chamber was carved from living crystal that glowed softly with inner light. Ancient symbols covered the walls, telling the story of Vellani civilization that stretched back 10,000 years. The doors opened, and the human ambassador entered. Zara had seen humans before, but always from a distance. This one was tall and lean, with short brown hair and dark eyes. His skin was pale compared to the blue tones of her people. He wore a simple black uniform with no decoration except a small patch showing a blue and green planet. "Your Highness, honored council members," the human said, bowing politely. "I am Sam Reynolds, representing the Earth Alliance. Thank you for agreeing to see me." His voice was deeper than Zara expected, and he spoke their language perfectly, though with a strange accent. Counselor Vex, the eldest member, leaned forward with obvious suspicion. "Human, we face a threat that has destroyed civilizations far more advanced than yours. What help could your people possibly offer?" Sam smiled, but Zara noticed it did not reach his eyes. "Counselor, you are right that we are newer to space than your people. But we have something that might be useful against the Korthak. Experience in warfare. You have fought the Korthak before?" General Nyx asked with surprise. "Not the Korthak specifically, but we have faced similar enemies. My people have been fighting wars for thousands of years. It is, unfortunately, what we do best." Counselor Mora, a female with intricate silver markings on her arms, spoke up. Fighting among primitives on one world is hardly the same as space warfare against a galactic threat. Sam's smile faded slightly. True. But principles of war remain the same whether fighting with swords or starships. The Korthak are strong, but they have weaknesses. Every enemy does. And what do you want in return for this help? Zara asked, studying the human carefully. This was when Sam's expression became serious. We propose an alliance through marriage, Your Highness. Specifically, marriage between you and myself. The council chamber fell silent. Zara felt her breath catch in her throat. Marriage? To an alien? The very idea was shocking. Counselor Vex stood up angrily. This is insulting. You come here with promises of help, then demand our princess as payment? Not as payment, Sam said calmly. As a symbol of permanent alliance between our peoples. The Korthak are not the only threat in the galaxy. There will be others. Our peoples are stronger together than apart. This is ridiculous, Counselor Jace declared. Even if we agreed, what could one human fleet do against 3,000 Korthak ships? Who said anything about one fleet? Sam asked quietly. The way he said it made Zara look at him more carefully. There was something in his tone, something that suggested hidden depths. How many ships can Earth provide? She asked. That depends on the terms of our alliance, Sam replied. A trade agreement might get you 50 ships. A mutual defense pact could bring you 500. But a marriage alliance, joining our peoples permanently? That would bring the full might of humanity to your defense. And exactly how mighty is humanity? General Nix asked skeptically. Sam was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was soft but somehow threatening. General, in the past 2 centuries, my people have fought 17 wars. We have never lost one. Not once. We do not fight for conquest or glory. We fight to protect what we love. And we are very, very good at it. The council members exchanged glances. Zara could see they were torn between desperation and disbelief. Even if we believed your claims, Counselor Mora said, interspecies marriage is extremely rare. The biological and cultural differences alone would make such a union difficult. I understand your concerns, Sam said. But consider the alternative. In 6 months, the Korthak will arrive. Your beautiful cities will burn. Your people will become slaves or food for their armies. At least this way, you have a chance. Zara studied the human ambassador. He did not look like a warrior. He seemed educated and civilized. But there was something in his eyes, something that reminded her of the predatory birds that hunted in Veland's mountain ranges. Patient, intelligent, and absolutely deadly when necessary. I need to discuss this with my council, she said finally. Sam nodded. Of course. But time is not our friend, Princess. The Korthak grow stronger with each world they consume. The longer we wait, the harder it becomes to stop them. After the human left, the council erupted in argument. Some called the proposal insane. Others pointed out their desperate situation. The debate went on for hours. Finally, Zara stood up. Enough. I have made my decision. The room fell silent. I will marry the human ambassador, she announced. Princess, you cannot be serious, Counselor Vex protested. I am completely serious. Counselor Vex, you said yourself that we face extinction. If there is even a small chance that humanity can help us survive, we must take it. As for the marriage, it is not uncommon for royalty to marry for political reasons. At least this human seems intelligent and respectful. But he is an alien, Counselor Jace said weakly. So are half the species in the Galactic Council, Zara replied. Besides, would you rather see me married to an alien or dead along with the rest of our people? The council voted, and the motion passed by the smallest margin possible. 4 votes for, 3 against. The wedding preparations took 3 weeks. During that time, Zara spent many hours talking with Sam. To her surprise, she found him well-educated and thoughtful. He knew Villani history, literature, and customs. He spoke several galactic languages fluently. He was nothing like the primitive barbarian she had expected. "Why did you agree to this?" she asked him one evening as they walked through the palace gardens. "For the same reason you did," he said simply. "To save lives. But you barely know my people. Why do you care what happens to us?" Sam stopped walking and looked at her seriously. "Princess, my people have a saying, evil triumphs when good people do nothing. The Korthak are evil. They destroy everything beautiful in the galaxy. Someone has to stop them. And you think humans can do that? I know we can. The question is whether we will arrive in time." The wedding ceremony was held in the Great Temple, a massive structure carved from a single crystal formation. Representatives from dozens of worlds attended, though Zara noticed that many seemed more curious than celebratory. A human marrying into Villani royalty was unprecedented. Sam wore the traditional robes of a Villani nobleman, though they looked strange on his human frame. Zara wore her grandmother's wedding dress, a shimmering creation that seemed to capture and reflect light like water. The ceremony itself was beautiful and solemn. When Sam placed the traditional wedding crystal on her finger, Zara felt a strange mixture of hope and fear. This strange human was now her husband. More importantly, the fate of her people now rested on his promises. After the ceremony, as they stood on the palace balcony acknowledging the crowds below, Sam leaned close to her. "Princess, I want you to know something. Whatever happens in the coming months, whatever you see me do or become, remember that everything I do will be to protect you and your people." There was something ominous in his words, but before Zara could ask what he meant, the cheering crowds demanded their attention. That night, as she lay in her new quarters thinking about her strange new husband, Zara wondered if she had made the right choice. Only time would tell if humanity's promises were real, or if she had just signed her people's death warrant with an alien signature. In 6 months, she would have her answer. 3 months had passed since the wedding, and Princess Zara had begun to think that perhaps her decision had been wise. Sam proved to be a thoughtful husband who respected her customs and showed genuine interest in Villani culture. He spent his days working with the council on trade agreements and technology exchanges between their peoples. In the evenings, they would walk through the palace gardens or share quiet dinners while discussing philosophy and history. Zara was beginning to forget that their marriage was originally a political arrangement. Sam was kind, intelligent, and surprisingly gentle. He never pushed for more intimacy than she was comfortable with, always treating her with patience and respect. Sometimes she caught herself thinking that under different circumstances, she might have chosen to marry him for love rather than necessity. The peaceful routine was shattered on a cold morning when General Nix burst into the council chamber without ceremony. His face was pale with terror, and his hands shook as he activated the central display screen. "They are coming," he announced. "Long-range sensors have detected the Korthak war fleet. They are 6 weeks away from our outer defense stations." The display showed a 3-dimensional map of local space. Moving toward Velan was a massive red cloud representing enemy ships. The numbers at the bottom of the screen made Zara's blood run cold. 3,412 vessels, General Nix reported. Including 47 dreadnought-class ships and over 200 heavy cruisers. Our entire defense fleet numbers only 68 ships. Counselor Vex stood up slowly, his elderly frame trembling. 50-1 odds. This is hopeless. Where are the human ships? Counselor Mora demanded. Our princess married their ambassador. Where is their promised help? All eyes turned to Sam, who had been sitting quietly throughout the briefing. To Zara's surprise, he showed no signs of panic or fear. Instead, he seemed almost calm, as if he had been expecting this moment. "I need to contact Earth immediately," Sam said, his voice steady and controlled. "General Nix, may I use your military communication array?" "Of course, but what good will it do? Even if your people send every ship they have, they cannot possibly match those numbers. Sam smiled, but it was different from his usual gentle expression. This smile was cold and sharp, like the edge of a blade. General, you are thinking about this wrong. This is not about matching numbers. This is about winning a war. Over the next week, Zara watched her husband transform into someone completely different. Gone was the diplomatic scholar who discussed art and literature with her. In his place was a military commander who spoke in clipped, efficient sentences and spent 18 hours a day coordinating with Earth's military forces. Sam set up a command center in the palace's eastern wing, bringing in advanced human communication equipment. The room buzzed with activity as messages flew back and forth between Velan and Earth. Zara noticed that the human technicians who installed the equipment treated Sam with a respect that bordered on reverence. When he gave orders, they moved with the speed and precision of a military unit. "Who is my husband, really?" she asked General Nix one evening after watching Sam coordinate complex fleet movements with apparent expertise. "I have been wondering the same thing, Princess. I did some research on human military structure. Sam Reynolds is listed as a diplomatic attaché, but that does not explain his knowledge of tactics and strategy. He speaks like someone who has commanded fleets in battle." 2 weeks after the first detection, human ships began arriving in Villani space. But these were not the crude vessels Zara had expected. The first to arrive was a battleship that dwarfed anything in the Villani fleet. Its hull was scarred with battle damage that had been repaired but not hidden. Gun ports lined its sides like the teeth of some ancient predator. More ships followed daily. Destroyers that moved with predatory grace. Carriers that launched fighters in perfect formation. Each vessel bore the marks of combat experience. These were not exploration ships or trade vessels. These were instruments of war, built by a people who understood violence in ways that peaceful civilizations could never imagine. The most shocking arrival came 3 weeks before the projected Korthak invasion. A massive dreadnought materialized in orbit, its dark hull seeming to absorb light rather than reflect it. The ship was larger than anything Zara had ever seen, bristling with weapons she could not identify. "That is the Retribution," Sam told her as they watched from the observation deck. "Flagship of Admiral Chen, one of our most experienced commanders." "It looks terrifying," Zara admitted. "It is supposed to look terrifying. Fear is a weapon, Princess. Sometimes the mere sight of overwhelming force can end a war before it begins." That evening, Admiral Chen came to the palace for a strategy meeting. She was a small woman with gray hair and scars on her hands, but when she spoke, even Sam listened with complete attention. Zara was invited to observe the meeting, though she understood little of the military terminology being discussed. "The Korthak fight like a swarm," Admiral Chen explained, studying holographic displays of enemy ship movements. "They rely on overwhelming numbers and brutality. But swarms have weaknesses. Cut off the head, and the body dies. Their command structure is heavily centralized," Sam agreed. "If we can identify and destroy their flagship, the rest of the fleet will lose coordination." "Easier said than done," General Nix pointed out. "How do we find one ship among thousands?" Admiral Chen smiled grimly. "Leave that to us, General. Humans are very good at finding things that do not want to be found." As the meeting continued, Zara found herself studying her husband with growing unease. The gentle scholar was completely gone. In his place sat a predator discussing the destruction of enemies with calm efficiency. When he talked about battle tactics, his eyes became cold and calculating. He spoke of death and destruction as casually as he once discussed poetry. "Sam," she said later when they were alone in their chambers. "Who are you really?" He was quiet for a long time, staring out the window at the human fleet in orbit. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft but somehow threatening. "I am exactly who I said I was, Zara. A representative of humanity sent to forge an alliance with your people. But you are also something else." Sam turned to face her, and for a moment she saw something fierce and wild in his expression. Yes. I am also a soldier. I have been fighting wars since I was 18 years old. I have commanded fleets in 7 major battles and countless smaller engagements. I have seen entire worlds burn and civilizations fall. Why did you not tell me this before? Because you needed to see the civilized side of humanity first. You needed to know that we are not just warriors. We build beautiful things, create art and music, love our families and cherish peace. But when peace is threatened, when innocent people are in danger, we become something else entirely. The way he said it made Zara shiver. And what do you become? Sam's smile was gentle, but his eyes remained cold. We become the nightmare that keeps evil awake at night. The next morning brought news that changed everything. Long-range scouts reported that the Korthak fleet had increased speed. They would arrive in 10 days, not 3 weeks as originally projected. They know we are here, Admiral Chen announced grimly. Someone told them about our fleet. They are moving faster to prevent us from completing our preparations. Can we be ready in 10 days? General Nix asked. Sam stood up from the strategy table, and suddenly the entire room focused on him. When he spoke, his voice carried the authority of someone who had commanded battles across the galaxy. We will be ready. Admiral Chen, move the fleet to attack Formation Beta 7. General Nix, pull back your ships to defensive positions around Velan itself. Do not engage the enemy until I give the signal. What signal? Nix asked. You will know it when you see it, Sam replied. Then he turned to Zara, and his expression softened slightly. Princess, in 10 days you are going to see things that may frighten you. You are going to see what humans become when we fight for something we love. I want you to remember that everything I do, every order I give, every life I take, is to protect you and your people. That night, Zara lay awake thinking about her husband's words. She had married him to save her people from the Korthak. But she was beginning to realize that she might have invited something equally dangerous into her life. The humans were not the primitive species she had believed them to be. They were predators who had learned to wear the mask of civilization. In 10 days, that mask would come off. As if sensing her thoughts, Sam spoke softly in the darkness beside her. Zara, tomorrow I want you to move to the underground command center. You will be safe there, no matter what happens. What are you planning to do? What I was born to do, he said quietly. What my people have always done when faced with extinction. We are going to show the Korthak why the galaxy whispers our name in the dark. The final week of preparation passed in a blur of activity. Human ships moved into position with the precision of a deadly dance. Weapons were loaded, shields were charged, and battle plans were reviewed endlessly. The Volani fleet, though small, was integrated into the human formation with careful attention to their capabilities and limitations. On the last day before battle, Sam came to say goodbye. He wore full military uniform now, with rank insignia that marked him as a fleet commander. The gentle diplomat was completely gone. In his place stood a warrior who radiated dangerous competence. The battle will begin at dawn, he told her as they stood together in the underground command center. Watch the displays if you want, but remember what I told you. Everything I do is for love. He kissed her gently, then turned and walked away. Zara watched him go, realizing that she might never see this side of him again. Tomorrow, the galaxy would witness what happened when humanity went to war. Outside, the Korthak fleet was approaching like a storm of death and destruction. But Zara found herself wondering which force was truly more dangerous, the savage horde that destroyed everything in its path, or the civilized species that had learned to channel their violence with surgical precision. In a few hours, she would have her answer. Princess Zara stood in the underground command center, surrounded by holographic displays showing the approaching Korthak fleet. The massive formation looked like a cloud of death spreading across space. 3,000 ships moving in perfect synchronization, their dark hulls reflecting no light. She had never seen anything so terrifying. Contact in 30 minutes, announced Lieutenant Beck, one of Sam's human officers. All defensive positions are manned and ready. Zara watched the tactical displays with growing dread. The human fleet, though impressive, numbered only 400 ships against the Korthak's overwhelming force. Even with the Villani vessels, they were outnumbered nearly 6-1. Mathematics alone suggested this battle was hopeless. "Where is Sam?" she asked. "Admiral Reynolds is aboard the Retribution, coordinating the first strike," Lieutenant Beck replied with obvious respect. "He will contact you once the engagement begins." Admiral Reynolds. Zara had married a man she thought was a simple diplomat, only to discover he was actually a fleet commander with authority over hundreds of warships. The transformation still amazed her. "Princess," came Sam's voice over the communication system. "The battle is about to begin. I want you to understand that what you are about to see may be difficult to watch. My people fight differently than most species. We do not simply try to win. We try to end wars permanently." Before Zara could ask what he meant, alarms began blaring throughout the command center. On the main display, the first wave of Korthak ships had entered weapons range. "Enemy firing on outer defense stations," Lieutenant Beck reported. "Stations Gamma and Delta have been destroyed." Zara watched in horror as two massive space platforms simply vanished in brilliant explosions. Each station had housed 5,000 Villani personnel. Gone in seconds. "Human fleet is moving to engage," Beck continued. "Wait, something is wrong. The formation is breaking apart." On the tactical display, Zara could see the human ships suddenly scattering in all directions. Some moved toward the main Korthak force while others headed for empty space. It looked like panic, like the human commanders had lost their nerve and were fleeing. "What are they doing?" General Nix demanded over the communication link from his command ship. "This is madness." "Trust the plan, General," Sam's voice replied calmly. "Maintain defensive positions around Velan. Do not engage until I give the word." The next 20 minutes were the longest of Zara's life. She watched as Korthak dreadnoughts smashed through the first defensive line like it was made of paper. Villani ships exploded one after another, their crews dying to buy precious minutes. The human fleet seemed to be everywhere and nowhere, darting around the enemy formation but avoiding direct engagement. "Princess, I am reading massive casualties," Lieutenant Beck said quietly. "We have lost 18 ships in the first exchange. The Korthak are pushing toward the planet." Zara felt sick. Her people were dying while the humans appeared to be running from the fight. Had Sam's promises been lies? Were they abandoning Velan to its fate? Then everything changed. "All units, execute Phoenix Protocol," Sam's voice commanded over the fleet channel. His tone had shifted from diplomatic politeness to something cold and absolute. "Light them up." What happened next defied everything Zara thought she knew about space warfare. The scattered human ships suddenly turned and struck the Korthak formation from 12 different angles simultaneously. But these were not random attacks. Every strike hit a precisely calculated target. "How are they doing that?" General Nix gasped over the comm. "Those maneuvers should kill the crews from acceleration alone." Zara watched in amazement as human ships performed impossible turns and sudden stops that would crush any normal pilot. But somehow the human crews not only survived, they seemed to thrive on the punishment. Their ships moved like living things, dancing between enemy fire with supernatural grace. "Humans are different," Lieutenant Beck explained proudly. "We can survive forces that would kill other species. Our bodies are tougher, our reflexes faster. In space combat, that makes us nearly unstoppable." On the display, the carefully planned human attacks were creating chaos throughout the Korthak formation. Enemy ships collided with each other as they tried to respond to threats from multiple directions. Communication networks were failing as key relay ships were destroyed with surgical precision. "Admiral Reynolds is targeting their command structure," Beck continued. "See how every attack hits a ship that coordinates others. He is not just fighting them. He is dismantling their entire organization. Zara began to understand what she was witnessing. This was not a battle between two fleets. This was a master strategist dissecting an enemy force with clinical precision. Sam was not just fighting the Korthak. He was destroying their ability to fight as a coordinated force. "Princess," Sam's voice came over her personal communication channel. "I need you to watch the next part carefully. I want you to see what your husband becomes when protecting what he loves." On the main display, Zara saw the Retribution break away from the main battle and head directly toward the largest Korthak ship, a massive dreadnought that dwarfed even the human flagship. The enemy vessel was surrounded by dozens of escorts, creating a nearly impenetrable defense. "What is he doing?" she whispered. The Retribution accelerated to ramming speed, charging straight at the heart of the enemy formation. Korthak ships focused all their fire on the approaching dreadnought, but somehow it kept coming. Its shields flared and sparked under the massive bombardment, but held. Then, at the last possible moment, the Retribution released a spread of boarding pods that shot toward the enemy flagship like bullets. The human ship pulled away, leaving behind 30 small craft that attached themselves to the Korthak dreadnought's hull. "Boarding action," Lieutenant Beck said with grim satisfaction. "Admiral Reynolds is leading the assault personally." Zara could barely comprehend what she was hearing. Sam had left the safety of his command ship to personally board an enemy vessel. What kind of commander did such a thing? "He does," Beck answered her unspoken question. "Human commanders lead from the front. We do not ask our people to do anything we would not do ourselves." For the next hour, Zara watched the battle rage across two fronts. In space, the human fleet continued to tear the Korthak formation apart with impossible precision. But aboard the enemy flagship, a smaller battle was taking place that somehow seemed even more violent. The boarding pods transmitted limited video feeds back to the Retribution. What Zara saw in those brief glimpses terrified her. Human soldiers moved through the enemy ship like forces of nature, fighting with a savagery that seemed barely controlled. They did not just defeat their opponents. They overwhelmed them completely. And leading them was Sam. Watching her husband fight was like seeing a completely different person. The gentle diplomat was gone, replaced by something primal and terrifying. He moved with deadly efficiency, making split-second decisions that saved his soldiers' lives while destroying everything that stood in their way. "Target the bridge," his voice commanded over the comm, "cut off the head and the body dies." "Admiral, we are facing heavy resistance," came a reply from one of his officers. "They have concentrated their forces to protect the command center." "Then we go through them," Sam replied simply. "No mercy. No prisoners. End this." What followed was 20 minutes of the most intense fighting Zara had ever witnessed. Human soldiers advanced through corridors filled with enemy defenders, taking casualties but never stopping. They fought with weapons, with tools, with their bare hands when necessary. Nothing could slow their advance. And Sam was always in front, always leading, always pushing forward no matter the cost. When the enemy bridge finally fell, the effect on the Korthak fleet was immediate and catastrophic. Without central coordination, their ships began to break formation. Some tried to flee while others attacked randomly, hitting their own allies as often as their enemies. "This is Admiral Reynolds," Sam's voice announced over an open channel that reached every ship in the system. "I am speaking to you from the bridge of your flagship. Your command structure has been destroyed. Your leaders are dead. You have 30 seconds to surrender or be destroyed." The silence that followed was deafening. Then, slowly, Korthak ships began to power down their weapons. One by one, the most feared military force in the galaxy was laying down their arms. "Impossible," General Nix whispered. "They never surrender. The Korthak fight to the death." "Not against humans," Lieutenant Beck said proudly. "No one fights to the death against humans. We are too good at making death permanent." When Sam returned to the command center 6 hours later, Zara barely recognized him. He was covered in blood and combat grime, his uniform torn and scorched. But his eyes were the most shocking change. They held a wildness that had not been there before, a reminder of the violence he had just unleashed. "The threat is ended," he announced simply. "The surviving Korthak ships will be escorted out of Villani space. They will not return." "How many did we lose?" General Nix asked quietly. 43 human ships, 11 Villani vessels. Approximately 8,000 total casualties. Sam's voice showed no emotion as he recited the numbers, but Zara could see the weight of those deaths in his expression. "And the enemy?" 2,600 ships destroyed or disabled. Approximately 12 million casualties. Again, no emotion, just facts delivered with military precision. The numbers were staggering. The humans had destroyed or captured nearly the entire Korthak fleet while suffering minimal losses themselves. It was not a victory. It was complete annihilation. Later that evening, after the celebrations had begun and the immediate crisis had passed, Zara found herself alone with her husband in their private chambers. The wild look had faded from his eyes, replaced by exhaustion and something that might have been sadness. "Are you afraid of me now?" he asked quietly. Zara considered the question carefully. She had seen him command fleets with deadly precision. She had watched him personally lead desperate battles against impossible odds. She had witnessed him transform from a gentle scholar into something that could destroy civilizations. "Yes," she said honestly. "But not in the way you think." Sam looked surprised. "What do you mean?" "I am not afraid that you will hurt me," she explained. "I am afraid of how much power I married into. The humans are not the primitive species we believed you to be. You are apex predators who have learned to wear the mask of civilization. You could conquer the galaxy if you chose to. But we choose not to," Sam said softly. "That is what makes us human. We have the power to destroy, but we use it only to protect. We fight not for conquest, but for love." He moved closer to her, and she could see the exhaustion in his face. "Zara, everything I did today, every life I took, every ship I destroyed, was to protect you and your people. That is what humans do. We become monsters so that the people we love can remain innocent." Zara reached out and took his hand, feeling the calluses from weapons and the scars from battle. "I understand now why the galaxy whispers about humanity in the dark. You are not just warriors. You are something beyond war itself." "We are what we need to be," Sam replied. "Today we needed to be destroyers. Tomorrow we will go back to being diplomats and teachers and artists. But if anyone threatens what we protect, we will become destroyers again." As Zara looked into her husband's eyes, she realized the full scope of what she had gained through their marriage. She had not just saved her people from the Korthak. She had allied them with the most dangerous species in the galaxy. A species that chose to use their terrible power for protection rather than conquest. The Villani would never be threatened again. No one would dare attack a world under human protection. The price of that safety was knowledge of what humans truly were beneath their civilized exterior. Zara found she could live with that price.